Alright, I'm starting some reassembly. I took the jack out of the jack plate and polished everything up and put that back on. Now I've got to reconnect the jack output wire to the volume pot. So I'm going to do that really quickly. When you're doing this on a Strat, it really kind of stinks because you've got to run the wires through various parts of the body and connect them to the pickguard and to the jacks and the tremolo claw and things like that. So you have to have the pickguard laying on the guitar while you do that. So I always protect the body of the guitar, especially since I just spent all that time polishing it. Alright, let's see if we can make these connections really quickly. Okay, once you make that connection, take your ground wire for your tremolo claw, slip it home into where it goes. It's different on every body, but on this one, it's right in the middle of the bridge pickup, which is weird, but that's where it is. Salvage that. There we go. All right. So next would be pickguard screws. Now I've had an older set of pickguard screws that didn't look very good, so I've polished those up, and I'll be using those to replace the hardware store flatheads that were on the guitar before. These are oval-headed screws. And there's two sizes of heads that I've seen on different models of Stratocasters and copies. The import Strats usually have a bigger size screw, bigger head. This one actually has the vintage Fender size head, which is a smaller head. But yet it has 11 pickguard screws, so nobody's going to mistake this for a Stratocaster, but it's just interesting the things they decide to copy and things that they don't. So I've got 8 more of these to do. I'll get those done and I'll come back to the video. Now, on to more reassembly. I'm going to attach the body to the neck. Just a quick little shine with some semi-chrome polish on a rag. This is sometimes tricky to get right. I like to use a couple of screws to hold the neck plate in place, and then try to get the guitar neck sitting up as tight in the neck pocket as I can. And these screws should find their way home because there's already screws pre-drilled in the neck, or holes pre-drilled in the neck. Not going all the way tight right away. It's not tight yet. Just want to check the fit. Yeah, it always had a bit of a gap, especially right there at the pick guard. Struggling with this. I think I actually may want to dowel and refill the holes in the neck and re-drill it, just to make sure that I get it in the neck pocket tight. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. Back apart again. So I want to re-drill these holes, but I have to put a dowel rod in there first. People would be right to say that I'm insane for doing this on a $50 guitar, but hey, it gives me some good practice to show you on the YouTube channel. What you need to do before you drill out holes in a neck or anything else that's not very thick is make sure that you're not going to drill through. And on a neck, remember that the fret wire sticks through the neck. It looks like maybe 1/8 of an inch or so. So just measure out how much drill bit you actually want to go into the wood. And then what I like to do is use a piece of tape. You need to use good tape. Use a piece of tape. Mark that off. Double check it. And I will wrap this several times. And you may be wondering, why would I wrap this more than just a little bit to act like a visual aid? Well, the reason is because I've had these drill bits try to take off before and go past the marker that I've established on the tape. So if I can wrap it with enough tape to create a shoulder, that shoulder will stop the drill bit from forcing its way through. the top of the neck. It's hard to explain, but it's just enough of a ledge and just enough stopping power to keep it from just launching forward in the wood. You don't need a huge shoulder, but I do like to create something that's maybe 1/16 of an inch or something like that on each side of the drill bit. So now, move that far and stop. That shoulder saves that drill bit from just taking off and launching through that wood. Alright, so I'm going to refill these with that hardwood poplar dowel, and I'm using the same technique that I used earlier with the body. I'm just going to cut a small piece of dowel, fill the hole in, with a little wood glue, and roll the dowel in some wood glue. Hammer it in, wait for it to dry, cut off the excess. And I usually do seal the end of the dowel with super glue, and then it's ready to re-drill. You gotta make sure it's nice and dead flat. You don't want those re-drilled dowels to add any neck angle. But other than that, pretty straightforward, and I'll show you the finished product. So I've got it drilled and redoweled. Need this to dry before I cut off the excess dowel. But I was just thinking about these screws. So normally on a Stratocaster, these screws would go into an 1/8 inch hole. But I did notice that these were a lot bigger than the typical screws that I've seen. So what I'm going to do, instead of an 1/8 inch hole, is I'm going to try to drill the size of the screw without the threads. So if I use my calipers and use this knife edge portion, I can take a reading of the shaft in between the threads. That is 1.4. So I'm going to go a little bit bigger than a standard Fender, 1/8, and I've got to find a drill bit that's bigger, and I'll use my numbered drills like I used earlier. That's 1.4. If you don't drill the right size pilot hole on hardwood, you will crack it, and I've seen a lot of necks that were cracked from people trying to drill these holes that didn't do it the right way. So got to find the right size numbered drill that corresponds to a 1.4. I'm going to let this set up while I figure that out. Then I'll cut that off and we'll get to drilling later. So I've been mounting some things. I got the bridge mounted. I don't have the saddles on yet, but I'll get to those in a minute. I'm thinking about replacing them because some of the screws were just beyond rusty, and these saddles aren't the best. I got the rear strap button fixed, and just about to do the top one, so I thought I'd show you that. I did my same trick where I measured out the size of the screw shaft, and I'm just going to drill with a number 38 drill bit into the upper horn. Now the thing is, it's got some, pretty large area there that I need to cover up, so I'm going to try to center my hole in the bulk of that damage, just so that I can be assured that the strap button will cover it up. The other thing I like to do is I like to use a brand new felt washer, which you can buy these things. You get a ton of them in a pack. I think it's a dozen or more, and they just make all the difference in the world in terms of like fit and finish. Yeah, see? Looks good. Alright. Gotta go find those bridge saddles. Oh, and I got my neck all drilled, filled, and now it's got to be leveled because I've got the super glue on and it's dry, and then I need to attach it back to the body. Okay, sorry for the background noise, but my air conditioner decided to kick on. I want to mount the neck, and I just want to show that process really quickly. I determined that the right size drill bit for these metric weird screws actually is a 9/64, so very happy about that. And I want to make sure that I don't drill through the guitar, so I'm going to set my depth roughly equal to the length of the screw. Subtracting just a bit because there's a plate, and I just want to be double sure I don't drill through the top of the neck. Now, what I like to do on this, whenever I do these, is I like to stand the guitar up, fit the neck as square to the pocket as I can, and as far down as I can. This gap right here is the gap that was giving me problems in the factory joint. Then I like to take one of these clamps and I try to get it right in there where the holes are not going to be in the way of the drill, or the jaw of the clamps are not going to be in the way of the drill. May have to move it around a little bit for different holes. that would hold for these bottom two. And then it's just a matter of drilling those two. Now, I just need to fit the plate. Something you have to pay attention to on certain guitars is that the neck screws are different lengths. It's either because of the neck angle or because of the angle on the back of the body. Okay, so I got the neck mounted back. I like the gap between the neck and the body much better. It's still not quite as square as I would like it, but I think that's the body route more than anything else. And I added some Fender stamped steel saddles to replace these cast, I don't know even what that is, pot metal probably, but cast imported saddles. And I'm gonna turn my attention now to the hardware at the top of the neck. Okay, the last items are the tuners and the string trees, at least for this headstock. Not sure if I can do this or not. We'll try it. Yeah, that works great. This last tuner has a dent in the casing that I think I'm going to have to try to correct before I continue. So I have the whole neck taped up here. I've been polishing the frets. I've gone through all of them, and I just wanted to show you the last couple. So it doesn't take much to do this, and I am doing this instead of a whole fret level and re-crown because the fret damage really is confined to just the two first frets, and it's really not bad. It's not going to affect playability. I suspect this fret wire isn't the best on such an entry-level guitar, and I just don't want to mess with the frets on this guitar at all. It's not worth it to me. So I'm using a little just metal polish and a tiny rag, and everything's taped up so I don't get anything on the maple fretboard, and it's pretty simple. Make them nice and shiny. So why do this? You know, it just besides looking better, it makes your string bends and the performance of the guitar just a little bit better, and you know, just helps kind of preserve the frets because they can start to get corroded over time from oils on your hands and moisture and things like that. So just give them a polish, kind of helps them from getting corroded. And you know, I just like the way it looks. So that's pretty much it. Time to remove some tape. Alright, I just tossed a burner string on here just to make sure that my saddles were going to work. And they look like they are, so I'm happier, much happier with these saddles than the originals. There's no collectability factor in these. These are much nicer for playability. Just way better for sharp edges and, I don't know, classic look. Alright, well, I'll take this string off. I'm going to be using a set of 9 to 46s because why choose between 9s and 10s if there's an in-between? So I don't intend on keeping this guitar, and I just figured that might appease everybody or nobody, so we'll go with those. Alright, let's get this taken off and then we will start anew. So I've done this before. I talked about string replacement on the Fender Teleacoustic project. Basically, the way I approach string replacement is to try to get 2 to 3 wraps on every tuner. And I don't tie knots, I just install and under wrap each string. And then, if you get 2 to 3 wraps, I don't think you really have much to worry about with strings coming loose. So basically, when you're replacing a string, get your tuner hole lined up so that it's parallel with the neck. Feed the string through. If you want to get 2 to 3 wraps, pull it about as tight as you can and then count over 2 tuners, back the string up that far, and then we'll start our winding. Now, I like to get the tuner at least perpendicular, like the tuner hole perpendicular to the nut, or maybe a little bit beyond, and then cinch back on the string, bend up the excess, and then continue the winding process. I've said this before, but the larger strings like to fight you in terms of going under the previous wrap. So sometimes you have to push down on those. Alright, that's darn near perfect. I've got 2 wraps on one side, 3 on the other. That's right where I like to have it. I don't tend to cut my strings off before I get everything set up the way I like it. But I've got this handy new tuner tool, and it has a string cutter on it. So these things are kind of cool. I recommend them. This one is Diodario. It's got a bridge pin puller for acoustic bridge pins. A couple different ways to do that, either here or this, depending on the bridge pin. Yeah, pretty cool. Also, if you want to help yourself out when you're using a winder, don't worry about tuning the strings exactly to pitch. Just try to leave your tuning pegs vertical so that when you use the winder, you're not slamming into the next door tuning peg head, and you can wind easily. Tuning to pitch can come later. On the smaller strings, if you want a little more wrap, you want 3 or 4 wraps, just go about another space on, where another imaginary tuner would be, maybe go 3 tuners worth or even 4 on the last string, but it's up to you. You can't do that on the fat strings because there's just not enough room to wrap. Also, if you're building a guitar and you're not sure about the setup, if you'll give yourself a little bit of extra slack or more wraps on smaller strings, that leaves you some room to if you have to restring with the same strings later, to get a better bite at the tuner peg, because you can shorten it on the next time you string it. That one's got 4 wraps. It just wasn't getting the under wrap that I wanted, so I had to undo it a little bit and then start over. Maybe wondering what I'm doing with my other hand. I tend to keep pressure on the string, and I tend to do that by holding it in my hand, and then I'll make a fist and turn that fist downward sort of 90 degrees, and that way I can sort of rotate my fist and keep it from cutting my fingers as it tightens. Probably 100 ways to do that. Got quite a few more wraps on that one. It wasn't pulled all the way up into the bridge, and I didn't realize it until I started wrapping. So one thing you'll notice is that some guitars have these string trees up here and some don't. But the ones that do nearly always have a headstock that's parallel to the fingerboard. And it's just necessary to get the correct string angle on a lot of the Fender guitars over the nut. On a Gibson or on a Jackson or any guitar that has a headstock angle that's different from the fingerboard neck angle, they build that into the wood itself instead of using a string tree. So, alright, I'm going to see if I can adjust the bridge. Actually, the bridge looks awesome right now. It's floating just a little bit, so I may not have to do much, and that would be exciting to me. But let me get this thing tuned to pitch, and then I'll check and see where my bridge is. Okay, well I got it tuned to pitch. Put a capo on the first fret, and I'm just going to check the neck relief here. And basically, you just want to fret the guitar right around the neck to body joint. 17th fret here on this one. And then check the neck relief with a feeler gauge. I usually like to check it around the 7th or 8th fret. So right now there's not much relief in this neck at all. That's probably because when I took the truss, or when I took the neck off the guitar, I went ahead and set it back to straight. Just checking out the frets. Interestingly enough, this is a Asian guitar with a American truss rod size. There we go. Let me take a little tension out of it. That's really close. I just put just a touch back in it. Just a tiny, tiny touch. This truss rod works really, really well. It's right there. I feel like I want to just put just a quarter turn or something back in it. Not even a quarter. That's where I want it. That's it. So, if you don't have your set of feeler gauges, get you some. This one has got all sorts of ranges, but what I'm looking for in this scenario is 12 thousandths or a little bit less. And when you put that feeler gauge up under that fret, or up under the string above the fret, you just want it to drag the string just a touch, maybe lift the string up, you know, just where you can just sort of see it, just barely, you know, vibrating that string as it goes in, but not raising it up significantly. You know, we're talking thousandths of an inch here. Alright, well that's got me the right neck relief. Now I need to adjust the action. Sorry, my camera keeps cutting out. There's supposed to be a range that a lot of people like the string action between, and it ranges about 20 thousandths in either direction. And I don't have enough room on my saddles to go down 20 thousandths if somebody wanted to do that. So what I'm going to do is shim the neck just a little bit. The other problem that I have is that this pickup, this Duncan aftermarket pickup, does not want to go down in its hole, so I'm gonna probably end up either making an adjustment to the wood underneath this pickup, or I don't know if I can find some other way to make space, but I need to get some adjustability in this thing, so the pick guard's gonna have to come off for that. So my trick on that is gonna be to use a capo on the first fret. You know, loosen all the strings, put a capo on the first fret to kind of hold these strings in place. Then I'm going to undo the neck screws and take the neck off, and then I'll be able to get this pick guard off, adjust this, put the shim in, and put it all back together. I'm not sure I'll get all that on camera, but I'm just letting you know. And by the way, if you're wondering what you would use as a shim in the neck pocket, there's two things that I've used in the past. One is I'll cut a small piece of metal, brass or steel, and just put it lengthwise, or you know, parallel to the frets near the last set of screws. And the other thing I'll do sometimes, especially on a cheap guitar like this, is cut a piece of a guitar pick and drop it in between the last two screws, and that kicks the neck up just a little bit, but it's difficult to get that measurement exactly right. But that's what I'm going to try to do, and I'm hoping my camera will last through some of this. But anyway, I'll get to that and show you the results.